Yeah.
Hi there, I'm John Hall with Mission Central, and today I'm speaking with Sandeep Jadhav. Uh, he is the pastor of New Life Community Church in Burnaby. I always want to say New Westminster, New Westminster, but no, it's Burnaby.
Yeah.
Um, so in this video series, we've been talking to people, trying to get a sense of their call into Christ's mission and why they participate in Christ's mission. So maybe tell folks a little bit about yourself, Sandeep, and we can go from there.
Uh, so my name is Sandeep Jadhav. I'm originally from India. I was born and brought up there, lived most of my life in India, and came to Canada in 2006 to study at Regent College, and now currently serving as a pastor here. Um, Growing up in India, I was raised in a bit of a subculture. My parents were connected to a convent uh, run by Anglican nuns from England. Um, and so from birth, I lived in that convent till the age of 21, where there was a school, orphanage, a church. Um, and for a long time, the word mission for me just meant the mission compound. I was in a big compound uh, with the school, a church adjacent, and it was very much a bubble. It was very safe. We were surrounded by non-Christians on either sides. At times, there were religious riots on either sides of the
Wow.
convent. But the convent area and the strip in that row was predominantly Christian families, and that was always very peaceful. But the compound was kind of what was the boundary of mission for me, and I didn't fully grasp uh, the faith till I was 18. And when I was 18, uh, a group of ragtag kind of missionary outreach uh, folks. They were um, from an organization that's not really well known. They were traveling all over the world, and they came and stayed in the summer in the school, which was in the convent, and where at that point my mom was the principal. And I was very impressed by this team because even though they were Westerners, two American guys were the first ones I met. They were very poor. They didn't have enough food to eat. And so I was very impressed by that. And yet they were just passionate for Jesus. And they kind of challenged me if I was truly a follower of Christ. And it was around that period that I gave my life to Christ and committed myself to be his follower. And that experience, it changed my life in many ways. I was very purposeless up to that point in terms of what I want to do with my future and things like that. And all of a sudden, I felt God had gotten a hold of me. And because I was brought to this active faith through a missionary team, in my mind, that is what it means to be a follower of Christ. A follower of Christ is someone who goes out and tells others. And so I started going out with them on the streets, at times translating for them. And slowly, that became the beginning of my journey into the mission field, where I wanted to drop everything and just join them. But friends of mine advised me to kind of take it easy a bit. And in a sense, I had dropped out of my first year of college studies when I had that experience. And so good friends advised me to go back and complete at least some kind of a program. And so I did 2 years of interior designing. And in those 2 years, I got involved with Youth for Christ in the city of Pune, India. And I also got involved in the local church. Uh, and the particular local church that I got involved in had these, they called cottage meetings, but they were like home groups, but they were church planting movements. They would
Oh, wow.
start a home group at a believer's home who was interested to invite neighbors. And so, unlike home groups here, which are church members out there, it was maybe one or two members of a church, but they would invite the whole neighborhood. And so, slowly, those home groups would grow into a church. And I started involving in that kind of um, uh, group meetings. And then again, being discipled by those who were older than me. Some of them had full-time jobs, but in the evenings, this is what they did. They went and did cottage meetings, and many of them did end up becoming full-grown churches. And after almost 2.5 years of being with Youth for Christ and with this church, I joined YWAM. I went to do the discipleship training school in Bangalore, in South India, and did my outreach phase in the Himalayas in North India.
Mm-hmm.
And it became very clear during that time that God was calling me into a full-time mission work. But I waited till I returned home and felt my parents' blessing, or asked for my parents' blessing. Initially, they were not sure what I was doing. I was 21, and they thought maybe I don't know what I'm doing. And so it took some time, but they agreed and released me. And in a sense, that launched me into uh, into understanding mission in a way that I felt like was um, has become formative for me. That's for me, um, being a Christian and being part of um, God's mission, which is beyond um, the compound, beyond what we do on Sunday morning,
Right.
that it's lived out every day. And so I got involved in YWAM, and I was with YWAM for 13 years, mostly in India. Uh, I did go to other countries through YWAM. Uh, and during the time that I was with YWAM, my friends started to affirm, and I started to discover that my primary calling was teaching. I was mostly involved with training schools. So even though I was on the mission field, I wasn't going out and planting churches. I led a few outreach teams, but I felt my call was more to equip others. And I felt small group discipleship was something I really loved. And I wanted to come alongside those who had a dream and vision and help them grow. And the picture I had was like the stakes that you would use to support a young plant. And for a season, that support is needed. And when the plant starts to grow on its own and grow strong, that support is not needed. And I felt that's how God was using me in those early years in YWAM, when young people came to be trained to go out into mission. It wasn't just mission as in join YWAM and become missionaries with YWAM. It was they were going back to become teachers or doctors or nurses, but going now with a heart for what God is doing, going with a sense that they carry the gospel with them, and that they are part of this God transforming the world task. Uh, and during those 13 years in YWAM, I also started to develop a love for the local church. So here I was working with a parachurch, but towards at least the second half of those 13 years, I started getting more and more involved with local churches, either by doing Bible studies or training church planters in India who had no access to theological education.
Mm.
And I myself didn't have a whole lot of theological education, but I'd done a few schools in YWAM, and one of the schools was a biblical studies school. And we wanted to help some of the younger people planting churches or leading churches, but they had barely a high school education, to help them study the Bible and teach it to their people. And all that kind of led me to want to study more myself, uh, to study theology for myself. And so that's how God opened the door for me to come to Regent. And Regent was a journey to, again, um, go through some vocational discernment of, is
Yeah.
God calling me back to um, the missionary kind of mission role, or be on mission with him in an academic role, or um, in the church.
So jump forward a few years, and then now you're a pastor of a
Yeah,
local church.
yeah.
And do you still try to integrate that missional vision for the people in your community
Um,
with their own lives?
yes. In fact, I've said that to people that, I mean, we've been here now about, this year would be 14 years. And it's only about 2 years ago that we became permanent residents in Canada. And part of the reason was, initially we didn't plan to stay here. But we only decided to stay as we started sensing a missional purpose. That we wanted to be where we feel that there is a missional component to the ministry God is calling us. And when um, um, when I interviewed, or I was interviewed for this role at New Life, what drew me was their heart for the mission field. Actually, I wanted to be in a church which has a heart for missions. They're giving to the missions, their involvement in the local community through the free store, and some. There was a ministry to the homeless, which temporarily is closed right now. But the free store was mainly reaching the new immigrants who were coming here, and a focus on one of the First Nations reserves in Cayucot, just off the, I think, west coast of the island, further up north. And that kind of gave me a sense that this was a church where I could integrate my missionary experiences, my theological education that I've just gained, and my newfound love for the local church, where I wanted to see the action happen. I felt that um, the society, to be effectively reached, it was the local church level where um, the missional kind of um, transformation, or um, some kind of like a catalyst needs to uh, be stirred up, um, that can, uh, in a sense, help every church member see that in whatever God has called them, that God is working in and around them. Um, that the church, in a sense, doesn't exist for itself.
Mm.
We are the agents of God's transformation in the world. And for me, I'm very convinced that the church is not incidental. It is very crucial to God's plan in this world.